Everyone loves a good hike in the woods, unless you're a couch potato, which is fine, I suppose. No judgment on my end. Sometimes while hiking in the wilderness, we can't help but feel something is creeping up on us. A feeling of unease washes over us and no one can explain why. In today's story, this phenomena may be answered. When a young woman is running her nightly trail, she comes across something out of the ordinary. But if running into it once isn't weird enough, how about twice? 3 times even. As always, the writer's link can be found in the description if you wish to check them out. You can send in your own story to rylhstories@gmail.com if you'd like to have it featured on the channel. Likes and comments are always appreciated. Subscribing if you're new is as well. Enjoy the story, and have a great night. I keep looking over my shoulder and jamming on my brights to make sure I see everything on the road. I can't trust the shadows. Not anymore. This whole ordeal started back in October, which in hindsight is probably why I waited so long to report it, or even consider it out of the ordinary. Just another spooky Halloween deal to drive folks up the wall for some scares and laughs. Like most people in today's age, I am, or at least I try to be, pretty healthy consciously. I've been living in a big city that has loads of biking groups, yoga classes, and running trails. Every day I run 2 miles before and 2 miles after work, with one off day. It was a regimen that took far too long to get into the swing of, and often was a struggle to maintain. I work at a bar less than a mile from my apartment, so typically my runs were at 1 PM and 1 AM. It was about the 3rd of the month on my second run when I started noticing something off. The trail I take is by my apartment, which I had just moved into back in February. It's a nice locale, but isn't anything really special. I'm lucky enough that it is nearby a mountainous, woodsy area, but is still safely contained and by the numbers as far as scenery is concerned. At nights, I typically work out with my phone on a strap to my arm, and a small fitness tracker with an emergency button, just in case. I, like any sane person, have heard the stories of what happens to runners at night in cities, and don't take chances about it. I was roughly a mile in, close to the joyous halfway for the trek, when I noticed some deer fairly close to the fencing by the upcoming turn. I stopped my stride and took a breather to appreciate the moment. It's not often that the wildlife comes up this close, except for the squirrels, birds, and sometimes rabbits. I took out my phone from its strap to try and get a picture, to snap over to my friends, but when I zoomed in, I was confused. The 2 bucks that stood under 15 feet away weren't moving at all. No visible breathing from what I could see, and not a single blink or turn at someone like me who clearly rushed up to the spot from a medium jog. I used the camera to survey the brush, when I saw the blood and the marks. Shoddy stakes had been shoved into the legs, holding them in place. Midway through the belly area, a thin line was forming a subtle gash on both of them, but only slim drips of dried blood remained on their hair. I stumbled back, obviously freaked out, when another runner came up behind me and slammed into me. Shit, I'm so sorry. I didn't even see you. Oh man, they started up already. I swear the complex's decorations get better every year. What? Wait, that's planned? Yeah, Halloween is this place's Christmas. Though I guess they do all the wreaths and stuff too. They enter the city's contest for spookiest setup, or something like that. All I know is it's fucking awesome. Last year they went full Romero, man. It was badass. Can't wait to see what they come up with when they finish. I nodded and felt relief rush over me. Of course it's decorations. Nothing crazy or whatever. I continued my run as usual, trying to shake off the jitters from being so stupidly startled by that. When I got back to my room, I got on my laptop and Googled the history of the competition. I had to admit, the guy was right. My place had competed against 40 other sites in the area, and actually won 5 years running. I was impressed and a little bummed that I didn't know it was coming. I would have loved to contribute in some way for the scares. I slept that night thinking of the deer, the gash on the stomachs, open just wide enough for something to be stuffed inside of it. I teetered on the dark idea that something had to have been taken out. The next day went by as usual. Wake up, drink water with vitamins, read the news, though lately I've only been able to stomach a few articles. Go on my first run, then lastly get changed and go to work. The shift that day was fine. A few rushes of people crowding in to watch the game, but all in all a slow night. I gathered my things and headed home, eager to run and see what the management set up today. I strapped my gear on and headed out. As I approached that same turn again, I was confused. Where the deer were the night before, nothing remained. They were far enough away, but I could still tell that the stake holes had been filled in. I thought to myself. I guess they moved them to the front of the complex for more views. I was about to start back up when I saw something move by the trees at the edges of the brush. I inched up the fence, taking my headphones out and looking closely. There, amongst some lower trees, it looked like someone was hunched over. I once again took out my phone and tried to zoom in. I couldn't make out the shape, and as I looked, my finger slipped to the capture button. My flash blanketed the fence in front of me, as well as the vegetation behind it, in white light. I felt a shiver run down my spine, as the sudden light startled me slightly. When I looked at my phone, however, I felt more than a shiver. There very clearly was something there, and the light made them look away. The reason I couldn't quite make them out before was because of the tattered cloth-like robe or tunic it wore, handmade, dark, and slightly tattered. This, however, wasn't the worst part. What was worse was the pair of blue eyes and glistening skin that greeted me in the light. It was pale, yes, but the base color wasn't human. No pinks, no yellows, no browns could be seen. It wasn't even sickly seeming either. It was as if I was looking at the worst version of a new color. The tunic-like garb came up and covered its mouth, but that somehow made it worse. Because those eyes shouldn't have shined the way they were from as far away. The longer I looked at the photo, I realized it was almost like black light. I jerked my head up after saving the photo, and tried to take another. The second I raised my hand, though, I was knocked over. My phone slammed into the fence, then careened back after pinging a column from it, and finally landed with blinding impact into the ground. I myself flew backward and hit my shoulder, then my temple on the left side. What the hell? Looking up through the pane, I saw the runner from the night before. I was so concentrated with that thing, I hadn't even heard him running up. I realized slowly that he was leaning over me, apologizing profusely for turning me into a practice dummy. "Oh my god, are you okay? I'm so sorry, I didn't even see you there. Oh hey, it's you. Where'd you hit?" I winced as my hand lifted up to my head. My head. It's okay though, the concrete made for a lovely pillow. Nervous laughter echoed from both of us, albeit for different reasons. They really should have wider lanes on this trail, or at least a sign to warn about this turn. Otherwise, people are gonna keep getting hurt. I answered sarcastically again. Or, we could just watch out for people when we run. Probably best that you look where you go. He smiled with a cuteness in his grin. I guess I'll look closer more often when I'm out by this turn then. I could feel my cheeks start to blush a bit at that, though I wasn't sure if he was flirting or really was that charming. Well, he said after lifting me up to my feet. I need to get my BPM over 160 if I want to stay steady with my pace. Name's Kendall, by the way. Figured I'd give it out if we're gonna keep slamming into each other. I gave mine as well, and Kendall gave me a quick toothy smile, and off into the distance he ran. Definitely flirting. Full blushing now, I was sure. I was so caught by Kendall's presence, I had almost forgotten about my phone and what I saw. Coming back to focus, I scrambled clumsily for my phone. When I lifted it and flipped over to the screen, I was heartbroken. As anyone knows, the moment when you see your phone shattered for the first time, it's like a slow-mo scene in a film. There's no suspenseful music, but you feel the tension rise as the first glints of glass dribble from the surface down to the ground. Sometimes, if it's bad enough, your hands feel it first. The jagged cracks and outward points may stab or slice your thumb. Maybe your palm. This was downright awful. This once fairly pristine device now looked as though I took a 4-iron to it. I clicked the home button to survey the internal damage. Miraculously, it still worked. I guess worked is the wrong word though, because to see through the pseudo-stained glass window look my phone now had, you really had to squint. Now upset, in pain, and exhausted, I prepared my journey back to the apartment. I stopped after a few steps though, and turned to face the fence. There was nothing there. Whatever was occupying that brush that night had vanished. No shape, no eyes, no discolor. When I was safe and nestled in my own home, I took a long hot shower. I thought of the day's long shift, the fact that I now needed to pay for phone replacement, and admittedly I thought of Kendall. I won't go into details. It's not part of the important information. But it was indeed a happy moment in the midst of all the trauma from this period, whether I knew it yet or not. I hooked my phone up to my computer, so I could look at the photos I took. If I couldn't navigate my newfound iBrick, I might as well find a way to take what I need off of it. I exported the photo to my computer, and tried to process what I was now looking at. The thing I had seen at the trail wasn't recognizable here. The picture was blurry and overexposed. Nothing like what I had seen on the camera viewfinder. Nothing close to the horror my eyes had seen. I had nothing now. Nothing except my memories and my sight during the night, which may not even be trustworthy. That night I slept uneasy once more. I dreamt of what was beneath the cloth. I imagined rows of jagged teeth, rotting and dripping with entrails. I thought deeply of the impossible blues, the magnificent color that shone through the night in unbelievable clarity. I felt them stare into my very soul, invading every sweet treasure I held dear. I was spooked after that night, admittedly. I started running during the days, and speedily trotted home from my car after the race home from the bar. Some of those nights I thought of Kendall. I rarely had, nor do I currently have, a well-populated personal life. Ken could have been something to change that. But once again, seeing him meant testing the trail once more, which meant scanning the wilds for the monstrous blue, or quite possibly, something far worse. The next event was October 13th, the ever spooky day, when I decided to leave well enough alone with my fears. Sure, the day had connotative meaning with the occult, but it was also a Saturday where drunks roamed the bar hops, and my patience ran thin. The bar I worked at is an outdoor location, one with a prominent following, and a small stage in the back area for live music. I was always drawn to that bar because of the rustic feel it commanded from the architecture, as well as the new craft beers it shifted weekly on the taps. I finished up that night, but at the end I had a guy beeline up to the bar in the most uncomfortable way. He strolled up with a crouched stagger, and would only be served by me. Vanessa, the only other tender worth a damn, was visibly put off by this. She and I were thick as thieves in the day. My only offering to the so-called personal life. But at night, those bar stools might as well have been ducks lined up for a shoot. We often kept score for tallied guests, and tried to beat each other at the end of the nights. Mr. Crouch was my swing vote that evening. "Yes sir, what can I get ya?" I said with a grin and a cupful of charm. The crouched man looked up at me, and I thought of him as decidedly drunk. "I would like a cup of stout. Strongest one you got." Sure, bud. Can you drink this for me first, though? I'd really appreciate it." I handed him a bottle of water, hoping he could at least drink that and get satisfied. "Fine, yeah, I'll take some water, but I need my beer after. You wouldn't believe my night." I replied with some uh-huhs and assured nods, but truthfully and begrudgingly, I admit I just wanted to get the guy to pay and scamper on out. Last thing I wanted was to scrape some sap off the ground, with a blanket of bile around his chest. "It's true," he persisted, now grabbing my hand that I held on the bar tap. "I was minding my business over up the road at the public park area, you know, with the lake and the cookers." He spoke between big gulps of water, the result of which was large plops of droplets fleeing from his lip. It was like seeing a reverse fireworks show, where the cannons pointed south instead of the sky. "Anyways, I was cooking a few steaks, meal prepping and shit, you know? I didn't want to cook my meat indoors because of the stupid smoke alarms going off at the simplest things. I looked over to the far end because I saw some ladies there when I got to the grill, and it had been quite a while since I heard a peep. When I looked up, I saw the girls had left, but dropped their shit. Being the gentleman I am, I walked over and tried to find them, but when I got to the chairs, I couldn't find no sight of them. I smelt this hefty funk though, like someone had lit firecrackers or something." The drunk hadn't finished his thought before he went into a stare and, simultaneously, fell off the bar stool in a backwards pitfall as two officers walked through the threshold. Immediately after seeing the drunken reverse swan dive, the two cops rocketed over and launched him into the air. He was in cuffs and into the backseat of a squad car faster than I could blink, though I kept thinking about what the drunk said. It bothered me how intense his face was as he talked about being there. Honestly, I understood the girl's reasoning for dashing. The man was, in the nicest words I can use, haunting. If I saw him alone or even with a small group, admittedly I would think the party was over, but still something just struck me in the worst way about his drunken words. Getting home that night, I was ready as all to get up and go onto the trail. Enough was enough, especially after that shift. My apartment was on the 3rd floor and located at one of the buildings located towards the back of the complex, near the most forest-laden parts of the city. The stairwell was dark, commonly having lighting issues due to the overgrowth of vines and some vegetation. As I neared the railing, I heard a low clicking noise. It wasn't uncommon, between the bugs at night or the janky sprinkler system. The noises of the nights were commonplace, though something about this was different. It was low and harsh, guttural even. I felt a pulsing crawl fixate itself up my back, and suddenly a voice spoke in my head. "Don't turn, don't run, don't look, just walk the steps, go inside, and stay still until morning." Everything screamed at me. My legs suddenly became weighted with fear. I took steps forward, as calmly as I possibly could. Behind me, I felt something big rush past, like a horse in full sprint. As the gust blew by, the scent of burnt ends and eggs filled my nose. It was like used fireworks. I obeyed the voice, even when I heard the brays of an animal. I got to the door, grabbed the handle, and nearly tore off the hinge trying to flee into the room. I immediately dashed to my den's window and snapped open the blinds. Outside there was nothing but the parking lot. My heart beat so viciously. I could feel the blood slam through my eardrums. My breathing felt shallow, and I knew dizziness was to follow. I knew what anxiety attacks were like, and I didn't doubt that the night's events could be the cause for one, though this felt different. Frightened and alone, the clicking played in my head again, and I felt weak. I immediately grabbed a chair to sit. Soon the blackness took over. That night was the worst yet. Running trails separated by cracks of dried blood that spattered hot gushes with each planted step. Shadows and darkness ripped into each turn, forcing me to rush like an animal on instinct. Screeches chanted behind me, and only one word registering through the dream: run. I woke up the following hours on the floor. My body howled through the morning haze, like a hangover without the headache. The still open blinds forced bright daylight to punch every corner of the apartment with brightness. I let the living room come into focus, and reached out to lift myself up. I noticed that there was blood on my carpet, and felt dried blood under my nose. I knew that I needed to go to talk to someone or go to the doctor, and decided that I needed some fresh air. Everything inside me was swelling and screamed to be outside of four walls. I laced my shoes and opened the front door, only to be greeted by a letter clamped to my mail clip on the door frame. This wasn't a typical thing for my doorway, as I paid rent on time, so there wasn't really a need for notices. Flipping open the paper, I nearly dropped all I was holding. It said, "Move or die." What the hell? I ran inside and began packing. No fond memories or cute boys were great enough to stay here after this. The nightmares, the displays, whatever I thought I saw, and now this, I couldn't. By midday, I had started a thought process to get a file with the police, or a detective for stalking, because I knew anything else would have had me institutionalized. I packed nearly all necessities into my car within the hours after, and began looking for hotels. With my second to last box in hand, I walked to my car with purpose. Suddenly I heard someone shouting after me. Turning around made my heart sink. Kendall. "Hey, where's the fire? Everything okay?" "No, not really. Heading out of town for a while, so you're gonna have the trail to yourself, even longer." The disappointment on his face was palpable. "Oh, well, that's too bad. You were becoming my inspiration to get up and run during the day." "Wow, you stalking me?" He was taken aback a bit at his attempted flirting backfiring that way, but quickly countered with that smile of his. "No, just know that someone with a body like yours doesn't stop putting work into it. Hadn't seen you at nights lately, so I figured you started enjoying the light more." He grinned wider, in a way that he had me and knew it. He picked the box out of my hands and opened my car door to put it in for me. "Look, if I'm not going to see you sprinting along anymore, at least let me have you over for a goodbye drink." It was tempting to be certain, but I didn't have time for it. I desperately wanted to have a night with him, but my priority was on the monsters in the dark. I let him down easy, and told him I appreciated the offer as well as the hand for the box. Closing the door, I began to start my last ascent up those stairs. Shame. I hoped I would get to put at least one target to rest. Kendall's words hit my ears with a slice, almost like I hadn't heard them. Something so awful and jarring that it had to be imagined. "What the fuck did you just say?" "You weren't supposed to look. They told you not to. Told you not to turn, or run. Not a great listener, are ya?" On a dime, I spun and raised hands defensively. Kendall was already there, fast and pressing himself towards me. I flew backward into the stairwell. The trees and vegetation that hid the back of the area made Kendall all the more menacing. His left hand was on my throat, and right forearm pressing into my chest. I never thought him to be this strong from looking at him, but I had no chance for a fight. What the hell is this? My words came out as squeaks, and my head was already swelling with pain. between the slamming against the wall and his death grip, I was indisposed. He raised his right arm and shoved his hand into his pockets, pulling out my broken phone. I hadn't even thought about it, but I didn't see it all day. I must have dropped it when I ran upstairs the night before. I'm gonna be perfectly clear here. Your life is done. They don't like being investigated, watched, or otherwise. You taking a picture falls under those categories. This is a self-explanatory slap on the wrist, really. How does that... I don't even know you assholes. Law of the jungle, bud. Just how things go. Animals don't like being cornered, and big guys like them. They like to do the cornering. So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna become a speck in the wind. Nature's little accident. Move on to some town, leave the country, die even. I don't care. Just make sure they don't see or hear you again, 'cause they'll find you. I'm not the only one in service to them. Cops, politicians, oh yeah, they're everywhere in the world. We stay out of the countrysides and they don't slaughter us by the millions. Fair trade-off if you ask me. What are they? Don't know. Some say freaks from space, others say vampires that inspired Stoker. I had just left their sacrifice from my yearly culling for them, when you fell upon the railing that night. He pulls back his shirt collar, phone still in hand, and showed a back scrawl of infection and bruising surrounding a bandaged wound. Somehow, though, he's still strong enough to pin. I haven't been unpunished for it either, so I've been tasked with keeping up with you, and now I've done my job. You're leaving, so let me leave you with a cautionary few words. Don't talk to the cops or the media. Like I said, they and their agents are everywhere. They're kind to leave you with your life. He pulls back and drops his left arm. I fall to the ground, coughing and filled with confusion. Space vampires? People under employ? Some psycho above me? All I wanted to do was beat the shit out of him, but there's no way I would succeed. No way to win. Given the evidence, I was well outnumbered. I crawled forward slightly and lifted myself up. I didn't look at Kendall once. Keys in hand, I marched forward. Kendall slapped my back and spoke the last few words I've heard since from him. Don't come back now. Since then, I've been driving. I don't know where or when I'll stop. I live in hotels now and rarely leave my room. I've sold most of my stuff off now for quick cash, and I'm close to running out. The first few nights were filled with paranoia. Every road sign I saw was just a hiding place for them. Every squad car could be someone checking up on me. I don't even listen to music, because I needed to know if something was in or out of the car near me. I didn't know what they could do. The closest I've been to trouble was tonight. I'm along the East Coast now, and I needed to finally just go for a run and be outside. I missed it. I needed to feel the pavement beneath my feet. I sometimes go into treadmills at the hotels, but it wasn't the same. About a mile into the trail along one of the beaches, I smelled it. Fireworks. I wasn't running with headphones, and hadn't heard any loud pops or blasts. The familiar spine chills attacked me. It was a half-mile from the nearest populated area, and if they were close, I had a low chance of survival. I looked to my surroundings, and saw blue orbs peering back 4 feet back in the trees. They could have been nearby all along, and I still didn't know. I heard one thought again in my head. Run. I took off, fast as I possibly could. My legs hurt, but I pushed. My chest rose and fell so quickly it was nearly a vibration. My sides ached and pulled, trying to force me to stop. From behind me I could hear the loud pattering and slaps of something encroaching on me. I didn't turn, but the smell made me want to explode. As I ran harder, I couldn't hold my stomach in. I began to vomit as I throttled onward. Bile escaped my lips as I grit my teeth and tears flew backward. I thought I was going to die tonight. I truly did. I could feel my feet begin to cramp. When I finally saw cars on the road, I darted towards them, hoping for safety. I made it just into town close enough that one of them backed off, but not before waiting for me to finally see it. My legs gave out near a spotlight with one of the cameras on it. I slammed down on the ground and started laughing when I heard nothing behind me. I twisted my glance ready to claim victory. This time there was no cloak. The blue orbs were eyes that set back into a skull whose skin was sliding off of it. The color on the skin still glistened and forced the dark jagged teeth to stand out much more. It was bipedal and standing on muscular legs with taloned feet, holding onto the ground with harsh clawed toes. The chest was something like bone, in armor almost, that spewed wet skin from it, and mesh formed the upper body. It just stared at me, letting me know exactly what it was. It wanted me to know what was out there in the night, what waited for me every time I stepped outside. I would never be safe. This is why I'm writing this, why I'm speaking out. This will sign my death warrant, surely. This will be my end, but hopefully it won't be yours. I had to reach out to warn all of you. If any of you live near heavy wilderness, if any of you see something in the night, do what I didn't. Don't look, don't document, because they'll find you. Promise me, dear listener, that you'll do one thing: run.